When it comes to the NBA media and the majority of fans, one of the biggest false narratives I've seen in the recent decades is the overall notion that Scottie Pippen saved Michael Jordan's career and was on his level in terms of value to the Bulls. And people like Nick Wright, Shannon Sharpe, especially Kendrick Perkins, they'll go one step further, saying Jordan, without Pippen, was a complete and utter loser. Now look, Scottie for a long time, I would say early 2010s, even mid 2010s, was severely underrated. But now as we advance further in the 2020s, I think Pippen slowly is going from underrated to vastly overrated. And the reason that's happening is people like Shannon Sharpe want to downplay Michael Jordan and his overall impact.
And it's easy for Mike because there's nobody else on that team that knows. Scottie is not thinking he's as good as Mike. Jordan and Ron Harper.
I don't know about that. Scottie was probably just as that's the thing that like media I feel like don't like point out.
You think Scottie thought he was just as good as Mike? Not defensively. Now defensively, hey, we know what Scottie is. But I'm talking about
scorer.
Yeah.
I think he felt like his impact was just as important.
Wow.
Yeah, why wouldn't it be?
So look, Trevor Ariza right there, like always with these players, has no hard evidence or facts, and it's mainly emotion and pure opinion. And look, opinions are fine, but at some point, you gotta have some facts, some data to actually back up what you're saying. And the overall notion Scottie Pippen was somehow as valuable as Jordan is completely ludicrous. Was Pippen valuable? 1000%. But looking at those first three championships, 91 and 93, Jordan on offense, and I would argue defense, was better than Scottie, and in terms of value, it wasn't even close. As Jordan averaged more points, assists, shot better from the field, better from three, better from the line, and had a higher PER. And looking at the advanced metrics, which some fans do love, Jordan compared to Pippen doubled him in win shares and box plus minus. And defensively, again I would argue Jordan in the first repeat was better than Scottie. And one thing for Jordan that really never gets mentioned, he was averaging 34 points per game, scoring 35-40 routinely in the early 90s. Every night in the fourth quarter was a go-to guy in the clutch for a big-time bucket. Jordan had that burden on him, and at the same time was a better playmaker than Scottie and virtually equal on the defensive end. That's why it's kind of ironic fans today, specifically LeBron James fans, say Michael Jordan was a score-first player and Pippen did everything else. I mean, looking at those numbers, the cold hard facts prove that notion 100% false. And one common retort I always see when talking about Jordan's overall value, it's that, well, when Jordan retired in 93, the Bulls 94 won 55 games. Now look, let me add some context. The Bulls 93 were coming off 2 championships, and Pippen and MJ had just played in the Olympics. And according to those two guys themselves, and players like Horace Grant and Bill Cartwright, the 93 Bulls were running in quicksand for the majority of that season. But despite that, nearly won 60 games, which for that Bulls team was actually kind of underwhelming. And one more thing that's never mentioned, the 94 Bulls. Yes, they lost Jordan, but they added Tony Kukoc, added Steve Kerr, even Luke Longley, and were highly motivated to win without Jordan. And one major intangible fact, championship teams, if not dismantled, that overall core pedigree is still largely there. And that's why in 94, they won 55 games and were relatively successful in the Eastern Conference. Now, what nobody ever talks about is 95 Bulls before MJ made his return. As the Bulls at that point, that overall championship pedigree was slowly fading away and the mystique was all but gone. As the Bulls that year pre-MJ, with his 6th seed being 34-31 before his comeback. So if you aren't following, the Bulls with MJ, 91, 92, and 93, that was a three-peat team as one of the best teams in NBA history. But only 2 years later, after Jordan retired, they went from an all-time great dynasty to a mediocre team and a fringe playoff team. If that doesn't show value, hopefully this does. The Bulls minus MJ 94 and half 95 were 89 and 58 for a win percentage of 60.5%. That overall win pace is 49. Still pretty decent. But looking at the Bulls, 92 and 93, even with fatigue, they went 124 and 40 with a win percentage above 75%. That overall pace would be good for above 60 wins. Like a lot of NBA debates, historical context is lost entirely with this Jordan-Pippen narrative and who's more valuable.
I think when I look at Shaq and Kobe, they're the defining point that Kobe said, I'm just as good as this mofo, bro.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all say whatever you want to say, and I understand what he is, but I'm just as good.
Nobody is as dominant as Shaq.
So look, I'm glad they brought up Kobe Bryant, because when comparing second options, the best second options in NBA history, Pippen even then isn't the best second option of all time. As guys like Steph Curry or KD, depending on which one you want, Magic, Kareem, whichever one you want, and then Kobe in the early 2000s were all better players than Scottie Pippen. And look, the only reason Pippen is given this high praise put in these debates is for one simple reason: to downplay the value of Michael Jordan. As looking at Pippen in the second three-peat, his overall impact, his health, was severely declined compared to the first three-peat. As in the playoffs, he was barely above 40% shooting, awful from deep, and a below average free throw shooter, compared to Jordan, whose overall production outside of scoring was on par if not better than Pippen, despite being a score-first player who averaged 14 more points per game. And quiet as kept, Pippen in those finals 96-98 was really abysmal, specifically on the offensive end. But even defensively, his overall mobility, athleticism was severely diminished compared to the first three-peat. And looking at those stats, under 18 points per game, under 40% shooting, and under 30% from behind the arc. That Pippen right there is never talked about. And that's why now in 2024, I would argue Pippen actually is a tad bit overrated. And looking back at someone like Kobe, who gets diminished for being a second option to Shaq, his overall numbers still are better than Pippen. Which kind of makes you wonder, why is Kobe the second option averaging 25, 5, and 5 on much better shooting splits, downplayed, but Scottie Pippen is uplifted despite being much worse in his second three-peat? It's not that difficult to follow. People in the media, the LeBron James fans, push both these narratives simultaneously. And one thing I do want to show you guys, to kind of give a one-to-one comparison, let's compare Pippen in those finals to some of LeBron's teammates in their finals. Of course, Shannon Sharpe, Nick Wright, Kendrick Perkins never want to talk about this stuff and these cold, hard facts. I was looking at Kyrie Irving. In his three finals with LeBron James, he was a walking 28-4-4 on damn near 50-40-90 splits. And of course, in 2016, outplayed Steph Curry, the MVP, had 41 in Game 5 and the biggest shot in Cavaliers history. Look, in the 2016 finals, 2017 finals, you could argue Kyrie individually was better than any version of Pippen in the finals with Jordan. It's not that hard. Look at Dwayne Wade, 2011 to 2014. 21 points, 5 boards, 4 assists on 48% shooting. And unlike Pippen, Wade in 2011 was his team's best player, being better than LeBron James, as well as Chris Bosh. And if the Heat won in 2011, Wade unquestionably was to win Finals MVP. Pippen not once sniffed the MVP in the Finals, playing alongside Michael Jordan. And even looking at Anthony Davis, a player I'm not that fond of, in the 2020 Finals as a peak Finals performer, he clears Scottie and end of his series with MJ, as AD versus the Heat averaged 25, 11, and 3 with 2 blocks on insane shooting splits. And defensively, Davis in 2020, one of the best defenders in NBA history. Since then, not so much. But in 2020, he was Bill Russell-esque. My overall point of this video is pretty simple. Scottie Pippen nowadays is overrated. He's still a Hall of Famer? Of course. A top 50 player all time? Of course. a vital piece of the Bulls, their second most important player, undoubtedly. But when someone like Shannon Sharpe Trevor Ariza tries to say Pippen in his prime for those three-peat teams was on Jordan's level in terms of value, I just can't go there. And that statement in its own proves Pippen today is indeed overrated. So, as always, thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time.